Hello, ILT. I want to present to you my proposal for our differentiated funds, and I'm using the same slide deck that I presented to SAC last week. So, for right now, the expectation is for you to just listen. And at the end, I will have a form or have a way for you to answer or ask any questions that you might have about this proposal. So, a little bit of background. To close the achievement gap in BVSD, each school is getting a lump sum for 3 years. And what the district is calling these funds is differentiated funds. And our funding is based on us being considered a targeted school. We've had discussions last year about what targeted means. Targeted means that our data isn't necessarily what it should be or could be, but I also really, really pushed for El Dorado to be a targeted school because I knew we would get more money and we would get more support from the district. So we probably could be a low priority school, but I wanted us to be a targeted school so that we would get more resources. So the purpose of this is to create systems and structures to build the efficacy at El Dorado to conquer any future gaps. So I have a backwards design plan of how these funds would be used, which I will show you in a minute, but that is the background. So every school is getting these funds, but each school's amount is different based on what they're considered as far as targeted, high priority, low priority, and then also it's based on our enrollment. So here's the process to get funds. So first, I had to meet with SAC to get their idea and vision, or to get the idea and vision approved, which I did, and they approved it last week. I have to meet with the instructional leadership team, ILT, for approval. Then we need to communicate with staff about this idea, vision, plan. And then I will schedule a time with district leadership to pitch the idea, plan, vision. And with that, there are entire worksheets that go along with this. It's very similar to a grant application, if any of you have ever filled one of those out. After the pitch, the district leadership will either approve or deny it. So I would hear within a week of where it lies. And if approved, then our funds are put into the account and we can move forward. So back to the second bullet of meet with ILT. Per our Wednesday morning schedule, I am not slated to meet with you all until the third week of September, which is actually, I think, September 22nd. And in my opinion, that's too late. The sooner that we can get these funds approved at the district level, the sooner that we can get this plan in action. So I am using this method to communicate and articulate the plan and hoping that we can collaborate on this digitally or figure out a time to meet. So the funds that El Dorado will be receiving is $106,250 for the next 3 years. And that was based on our enrollment last year. So no matter what happens with our enrollment in the future, we will get these funds every year for 3 years. But we have to go through the process every year to get the funds put in our account. This year, I can be proactive and do it in the spring so that we have the funds right away starting in the fall. As far as data, to create the plan, I used our UIP or data from our UIP, and this is a summary of it. This is some of the data that we looked at last year as an instructional leadership team. So the first bullet is that IEP students are disciplined at a higher rate than other students in the building. That has been a trend over the past couple years. It was not data pulled from last year because of COVID, but the previous 3 years. Second bullet, diverse students, which are any students that are considered not white. So diverse students are disciplined at a higher rate than our white students. Only, third bullet, only 2 students that are considered diverse, so non-white, are labeled as GT at El Dorado. And then the fourth bullet, our Latinx population is about 9 to 10% of our population, but accounts for 19% of our IEP students. This data might be a little old, but it still is a trend here. And then the last one, 12% of our middle level students were below grade level in the fall of 2020. Obviously, we don't have our data this year yet, but this is the data that I am using to craft the plan I came up with. Some of the values of SAC were valuing people over programs and computers, providing enrichment opportunities for all, using funds to hire people instead of other options, and use the knowledge in our community if we can. So with that, here is my plan or vision. And again, year 2 and year 3 could look different. I want to continue to model how to use backwards design and plan backwards. So again, these plans could change if we look at data and we need to change them. But as of right now, this is kind of where my brain was at. So year 3, 60% of the funds would be allocated to an instructional coach. So I'm assuming that, to me, that would be like a 0.5 person, whether they're in the building already or someone new, to help and work with teachers and just process and reflect on their instructional practices. 20% would be allocated to professional development and learning. That could be conferences. That could be getting someone in here that has a certain expertise. And then in addition with that, 20% would be allocated to collaboration, sub, or peer observation. So kind of these go hand in hand. If you want to go to a conference, you also need sub time. So how do we utilize the funds to really gain some knowledge and build that efficacy within each other while we have it? Year 2, 60% of the funds would be allocated to an instructional coach again. But the difference with year 2 is 20% I would want to allocate to an instructional para. And then 20% would be allocated to professional development or learning. So again, this is all based, we would look at data each year and these plans would change. And I have to submit the worksheet every single year. So I don't have to present necessarily what's happening in future years because that should depend on our current data. But this is me modeling and using backwards design. So for this year, my plan and idea and vision is to use 80% of the funds on instructional paras and 20% on professional development or learning. So for example, my thought would be getting 2 highly trained, almost pretty much teachers or have the background of educators as paras, and we actually have a few in the community that are interested in this possible opportunity to come in and work with staff so that we can help build in interventions and enrichments in our classroom. So essentially creating tier 2 opportunities in our classroom. I truly believe that we need the help of others or another person to kind of gradually release the responsibility so that we can eventually do it on our own. So for example, if there is a para, and I'll use a middle level language arts class. In a middle level language arts class, for example, if there was a para assigned for the whole week during periods 2, 4, and 6, that teacher would know that they would have that extra person and they would probably plan differently. So during the plan, they would look at their data, and we could start off with Common Lit reading data, and they would say, I have 5 kids that are below grade level in reading, and specifically they need help with informational texts. So during second period, I am going to pull those 5 students and do a little mini lesson or model my metacognition of how I would go about interpreting a nonfiction text. But the rest of the students already understand this and they have that skill set. So the rest of the students would be working independently or in collaborative groups on something else since they don't need to be retaught this. So this is where the para comes in. If the teacher pulls the small group to work with 20, 25 minutes, the para then is in the classroom to make sure that the other students' needs are met, whether that's answering questions, making sure that they're on task, and just making sure that things flow while the teacher is working on that intervention. It could also be flip-flopped, where let's say the para's expertise would be with this intervention group. So the para would then pull these kids, and then the teacher would be with the rest of the class. And we could also see that with our enrichments. So let's look at our data and what kids get it and are there, and how can we extend the learning for them on the current learning target and standard that we're currently working on in the classroom. So that's a little bit of a drill down of how I see the use of these paras. I would want to kind of train them. I would want them to have an explicit schedule so that teachers can plan to have them and know when they would be in their classrooms. I would like to utilize them at grades 4 and up, since that's where we don't have traditional para support. And I would like to constantly look at data and look at how we can utilize an extra person so that we as educators can build our efficacy and get more comfortable to do it on our own. Then 20% of professional development and learning would be spent on these funds. So that could be paying outside people to run some PD that we feel like we need. It could be on subtime, data digs, giving teachers days to exclusively work with admin to like really set up their instruction moving forward. But again, that would all come from ILT, and we would decide as a collaborative group moving forward. But that is my plan for year 1. The paras would essentially probably be here 9 to 1 or 2. We could possibly probably even afford to have one of them here the whole day if that's something that they wanted. But again, the purpose is so that we strategically schedule them so that teachers can plan to have another adult in the room and practice working on the instructional model and creating tier 2 interventions in their classroom. To progress monitor this plan or idea, we will use iReady, we'll use Common Lit. At the end of the year, we can use our CMAS data or next fall. We will look at our discipline data from IC. We will use data and pull data from PBIS with our source slips. Are we giving source slips to the same students? Are we not giving them to our diverse students? How can we look at that data and just learn from it from a behavior standpoint? We'll look at our IEP data and then also our GT data. So this is how I would progress monitor if this goal or these paras are truly having an impact here at El Dorado. And so questions that some people had to bring into the fold of one of the reasons why we might see some gaps within our students is their ability to just organize themselves and their executive functioning skills. So is there a way for these paras to also, in addition with our counselors, pulling small group or tier 2 interventions, or going in and helping us as a staff learn how we can scaffold and break down some organizational techniques, or just how we talk to students about assignments and how we can just add in little subtle pieces so that we are helping them to organize. And it's kind of like we don't know what we don't know, and there might be little things that we can change in our behavior as adults so that kids are more successful. So I'm going to stop there, and in your email you will find information on next steps. Thank you for listening.